yesterday, Rachel Reeves gets up, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, says the Tories have lied to the nation, they've hidden the figures. I mean, it was almost like a sort of old-fashioned Stalinist Soviet show trial. The Tories are the guilty men, and, they try to answer back, but they couldn't. But tucked in the middle of all of this, and not really getting the coverage that it normally would have done, is the whole scheme for winter fuel payments. Now, just to remind you, Tony Blair brought this in, nearly 25 years ago. There were criticisms that some very rich pensioners were getting a winter fuel allowance. But what she's basically done is said that unless you're on pension credits, you ain't going to get the winter fuel allowance. And this affects 10 million people, the vast majority of whom are not rich or well off. And this comes at a time when gas prices have risen significantly. I have to say, I think it's rather a cruel thing to do, and I certainly won't be voting for it as and when I get the opportunity. There were times in the past where maybe the argument was it wasn't necessary, it had been given as a bribe, but it's almost like Labour is saying, well, we don't care about the pensioners because they're not going to vote for us anyway. And that money that could have gone to pensioners has gone for massive public sector pay rises, including over 22% for junior doctors. I put it to you, Matthew Laza, Labour supporter. This is a very cynical thing she did.
I wouldn't say it's cynical. I'd say it's a sad thing she's done, but she's felt she had to do it because of the state of the public finances. It's not something that anybody in the Labour Party wants to do. As you say, it's a Labour policy. They were introduced by the Labour Party. But, I wonder if you can remember who said about 10 years ago, who's going to be brave enough to tell the wealthier pensioners that their benefits will be cut? Well, it was the Free Enterprise Group of Tory MPs, backed by the IEA, the think tank that then gave us Trussonomics.
Whoa a second.
Yeah.
Yes, but gas prices then were very affordable. They are now. I'm having a row with my supplier at the moment.
I know that.
I might get cut off.
D-Bank now cut them.
The bill, I can afford it.
Yeah, of course.
But the bill they've sent for my gas for the last year is extortionate.
Yeah, look, it is.
And I'm not a pensioner on a fixed income.
Absolutely, and it is difficult. But sadly, when you look at the figures, fuel poverty now, partly because pensioners as a whole have got richer. That's not to say they're all rich, but pensioner poverty has gone down, whereas family poverty of those in working age has stayed static over the past 25 years. So sadly, the burden has to be shared, and the triple lock on pension, the state pension itself, is absolutely sacrosanct, but in order to make the books balance, I mean, this is not a cheap policy. It costs roughly the same as the whole of the spending on the Royal Navy. I mean, so we're looking, it's $2 billion plus in total, about 1.7 billion for the people who are not going to get it anymore. So it's serious money. I think Rachel's been brave by doing it at the beginning. Clearly, if there was to be another, if fuel prices were to rocket as they did in the early days of the Ukraine war, I know obviously they're still much higher than they were before, then clearly the government would look at more support.
Andrea, you were recently representing a constituency with plenty of pensioners and not many rich ones, I would guess.
Absolutely. But what I find remarkable, Nigel, is that they are punishing the pensioners, but they're spending billions of pounds on the net zero climate change agenda.
Well, which affects electricity prices.
Absolutely.
Doesn't affect gas prices, but it affects... Mind you, the Americans pay half for their gas that we do, because do you know what they do? They frack and produce their own.
I'm pro-fracking. I've always been. Nigel, yes.
So
I just think, as you said, fuel prices are majorly high, and why punish them at this time? Why are they trying to push, Miliband trying to push his climate change agenda so quickly? I mean, I would dump the agenda anyway for net zero, and I'd frack and I'd use coal, etc. But we need to roll back on that, but they're not going to. And it just feels to me that they are punishing the pensioners, they're punishing those who want to work hard. And look, they're letting people out of prisons. That's probably why Chowdhury's got a long sentence, because they're letting these thousands of people out.
Well, it's not all bad then, is it?
Don't argue against yourself. prison spaces.
But also having an amnesty on illegals as well, which they mentioned during the election.
Which it looks like. I mean, Matthew, it is an interesting point. She talked about a black hole, a 20 billion black jacques. I watched it all, and Labour were cheering, and the Tories were indignant, and I was just laughing at the whole thing. But there's a real big black hole coming, and it's this. The last auction for offshore wind in the North Sea didn't attract a single bidder.
Absolutely.
Not a single bidder. So, Mike, and I'm not saying you can answer this, but if Ed Miliband has got all these companies that are going to build vast arrays in the North Sea, I wonder what the price is going to be. And I wonder what that means, because all through the election, we were told that renewable energy would give us cheaper bills. It won't, will it?
Well, it potentially can, but it's a big journey to get. It's a big journey to get there. Well, that's the point. I mean, one thing he has done is not many people notice this. He's involved the Crown Estate now, which actually owns the some of the seabed. But he actually wants to get the Crown Estate in developing the fields themselves, because obviously, as you say, in the last auction there were scarcity of bids to never mind net zero. It was zero bids to get us to net zero, and that is the problem. I used to work for Ed Miliband. That is the problem. He is absolutely passionate and committed to this, but it has to be done in a way that delivers for people who are worrying about their energy bills. The problem is the lead time on that is huge, which is why that Labour's probably most populist policy of the election was it scrapped the Tory policy of making you get rid of your boiler. So Labour does have a pledge that it won't force you to get rid of your gas boiler.
Oh, look, Boris Johnson went down this route in a very, very big way, and you could argue that much of what Miliband's saying is not that different to Boris Johnson. Yeah. But the truth is, decarbonising the grid by 2030 would cost far more for pensioners than losing their winter fuel.
Well, the truth of the matter is if you listen to the people at the sharp end, both the companies themselves, but also the workers via their trade unions, the GMB union and Unite the union, are both absolutely clear that it's physically impossible to do that, partly because there aren't enough cables in the whole world to do it. So I think what we've got to see is a dash of common sense.
Yeah, and we can't do it.
And the potential conflict between Miliband and the Green Lobby and other voices in the government. So that is, watch out for that in the autumn, I say.
Final thought on this. Do you think the Conservatives and opposition will oppose the net zero policies of the Labour Party or support them?
I mean, given the makeup of the what's left of the party, they'll probably support it, but I want them to oppose it.
OK, well, one little observation I've got from just a few weeks in that place is how much the front benches agree on most things.